Welcome back, everyone. Coming up next is a fireside chat on Zoom on CX and digital transformation in the public sector. I would like to invite Mohammed Ujaley, Senior Assistant Editor, ETGovernment, to moderate this conversation. I hand it over to you, Mohammed Ujaley.
Hello and very warm welcome to this special Fireside Chat discussion for National Governance Virtual Summit focused on Zoom on customer experience and digital transformation in public sector. To lead the discussion, I am joined by Mr. Sameer Raje, General Manager and Head of India for Zoom Video Communication. Mr. Raje, thank you so much for joining us today. And let me begin by asking you what we have observed over the last 2.5 years that enterprises, public sector, and government organization or organization of different sector or different sizes, they all have been working in a hybrid mode, and that seems to have somehow accelerated adoption of collaboration tools and technology. What has been your general assessment, given the fact that in most of the cases, organization like yours would have been a great enabler of this hybrid mode?
Well, first and foremost, Ujaley, thank you very much for having me here. It's a pleasure to meet you and as well as your audience. Thank you so much. If I have to, comment on what has happened in the last year and a half, in the world of collaboration, the matter of fact is we were all forced into this world, especially the PSUs and government sector. Before this, there was a little bit of hesitancy in adopting the technology like collaboration tools because, the thought was always, will we be productive? Will we be safe? Or, what would my employees really do when they are not in office? And, is it safe enough? However, when the pandemic set in, we were actually left with no choice. The government, the PSU sectors were left with no choice, and everybody literally, picked up their laptops and even desktops and went home and were working in a, at their home environment. So, if I have to say, where pandemic actually drove the transformation of the mindset that yes, collaboration tools are productive, collaboration tools do help, and it's a great help in terms of not only remaining productive but saving also money. So that transformation happened over a period of time in the last, say a 12 to 18 months time frame. And this was literally forced upon two sets of people. First is the end users themselves, who were the users of this technology. Before, they were a little bit hesitant. Oh, I don't want video. I don't want this. I don't want that. So they started adopting to this technology because, well, that was the only way to stay in touch or bring in that, human element to it. And then came the technology and the IT teams, which said that, okay, we have no option but to provide these tools to the end users, because without which they will not be able to work. So there was a transformation on both ends. First is the users themselves, and second is the technology folks themselves. So the transformation happened on both sides, especially in the PSU and the government sector.
Absolutely. And we also noticed the fact that the experience for a different types of organization or people having access to devices and technology, they had a different kind of experience. Like somebody accessing something from rural areas might be having not that so far great connectivity, had a different experience altogether. Now that brings me to a question wherein a public sector organization need to serve people. And what really happens that a person when reaching out to government department, it is looking for a seamless experience. And for that, we have been noticing that government organization has been adopting for omni-channel experience. Whether you go to their website or mobile apps, services are available. Providing an omni-channel experience in totality to citizen and government employees can experience can enhance people experience with the organization. How do you look at it, and how collaboration platform like Zoom has potential or has been enabling this, the kind of role that you have played? How do you look at it?
Well, this is a classic example, right? I mean, if you look at a few years back when the digital payment mandate was, implemented, the initial reaction was digital payments won't work in India. Today, look at it. I mean, each and a lot of mom and pop stores, even a small time vendor, or even an agent and so on and so forth. Everybody is using the digital wallets and payment options. It's become so much easy, right? Rather than going to an ATM, withdrawing cash and filling up your wallet and walking down the street. It's become so much easier now. Same thing has happened with collaboration also. However, in a different way, right? It is always the private sector, if you look at it, has always been focused or obsessed with what we call it as customer experience or the CX. Now, in the pandemic, what happened is when the government as well as the PSU segments were forced into the virtual world, they realized suddenly that going or adopting these technologies is suddenly improving the customer experience so much. There was a time when the public sector banks used to say, you know what, come to me, stand in the line for 2 hours, and then I will update the passbook for you and give it to you. Well, the result was very simple. Customers started moving to private banks, right? Similarly, if it was some other organization, let's talk about petrochemicals or manufacturing units, in the large PSU segment, it was the same case, right? I mean, oh, okay, why do I need to really worry about this? I'm the only one. Customer will come to me. When point number one, this started transitioning much earlier when the organization started or losing the customers to private sector. Now comes the fact that adoption of digital technologies, virtual collaboration tools like Zoom, and suddenly that you realize that, oh, if we do this, there is so much of a difference and customer experience is so much different, whether it's omni-channel presence or whether it is ease of use. At the end of the day, it is all about the CX, customer experience, as we call it. If you see some of the technologies that have been implemented today by a lot of PSUs and government segment, we've seen election rallies happening virtually. We've seen now all the PSUs migrating and moving and adopting technology. You would be surprised a lot of PSUs using wearable devices to relate back information of what's happening on the shop floor or on a remote rig back to their HQ or to the manufacturer where saying that, hey, I'm having this problem in the machine and can you help me? Similarly, public sector units, banks using KYC and using the EKYC mandate where they were forced to use EKYC, right? I mean, earlier I would come or get my picture clicked and upload it. Now it is all happening on EKYC, and RBI is doing a wonderful job in driving that. So, for all you know, Zoom might be embedded at the back end for that very purpose. So, to answer your question in short, what has happened is, the public sector units and the government especially have realized the power of collaboration in this last 1.5 year and have implemented it to improvise the CX. And that's a great turnaround, I would say.
Absolutely. I think you're absolutely right that especially the collaboration tool over the last 2.5 years, I mean, any type of tools that have been embedded within the government system like any time before. That brings me to the another question. What steps can PSU and citizen services organization can take to provide continuity of building confidence? Because one of the major challenge within the government sector is that it has to create a kind of trust and confidence, also ease of using the tools, and then there is a lot of adoption can happen. Would you like to share some of your views, and especially if you have some example on that?
Sure. That's the whole crux of it. And if you look at Zoom in particular, why did Zoom became so popular or rampantly adopted in this last 2 years? We've been existing for the last 11 years, and the whole idea of Zoom was to create a friction-free, video-first, and simple-to-use video communication platform. And in this last 2 years, when users were using it, they could simply say that it just works and it is easy to use. And what we call it as, even a senior citizen walking down the road, if he doesn't need a training or education or hand-holding, if they can start using it, we've passed. We've done a good job. And that's exactly what happened with Zoom. We didn't go and tell everybody that, hey, you need to use Zoom, you need to use Zoom. We saw the word of mouth because one person telling, hey, have you used Zoom? It is very simple to use. So in those cases, you really don't need adoption. You don't really, the technology team doesn't need to go and say that, hey, this is a collaboration tool. Why don't you start using it? It will improve your life. The users themselves have gone to technology and said that, I need this because it's so simple, easy to use, and works even in low bandwidth areas, as you highlighted, right? So that was the fact. Now, along with this ease of use adoption comes the second aspect, which is, the governance part. And that's where your point about giving that assurance back, not only to the employees, but even the customers, that everything is okay and everything is provided. While we are doing or providing ease of use, the IT team, the technology teams, and especially in the government sector, need to focus on security and a couple of other aspects which are regarding the governance. I will leave the security component out because it is very, very critical and crucial for the governments and the PSU organization to follow the security topic. That if I start getting into it, it will be a whole lengthy conversation, right? So let's talk about governance, which is related to your question right now, and which is, you know, today when an employee is working from his or her own private environment, which is their home, we need to understand that they are their own chief security advisors. What I mean by that, if the device doesn't work, they are going to use their own private device. They are seated, let's say somewhere in, they take a walk outside and they're talking, or they are doing a meeting out, let's say for a fresh air in from a garden, or an open area of their apartment, which is quite a norm today. Well, you know what? Who is standing behind watching and doing what? You never know, right? So, especially in the government segment, we need to understand that there are two things. First is the governance, and second is the end user education itself. And we do a lot of things on the end user education, telling them what to do, what not to do. Governance is completely about the IT team and implementing those parameters and ensuring that the users are in a safe environment and using it in the right way. In that those governance rules can be force implemented by the IT team, and it's so important in the PSO segment that these governance models are implemented in the right manner.
You touch upon the security part, so possibly I'll have one more question on that. And what we have been observing based on our conversation with most of the public sector organization and government department. I mean, compared to the state and central government department, pure central government or a state government department, public sector organization like any public sector organ, large or small, they seems to have, more, I would say, affinity about security. Possibly what they are looking at an enterprise grade security in whatever they are using, whether it is a collaboration platform, whether it is software, whether it is something in their data center. And they also need a kind of agility and scalability at the same time. Somehow they have to balance. As a Zoom, given the fact that Zoom is being used in US by judiciary, I mean, most of the hearing that happened was happening on Zoom in itself. How do you bring that element of enterprise grade security, number one? Second, how do you actually convince people? If you could share based on the 2 year experience of the kind of work that you have done in India, at what level you are, and how you are actually providing enterprise grade security.
Absolutely. That's, as I said, security is very dear topic to me. And, you rightly mentioned, the fact is, what the security parameters are needed by a bank probably are different compared to what the security parameters required by a pharmaceutical versus, a manufacturing unit versus something else. If you look at 2 years back when Zoom was, being adopted during the pandemic worldwide, Zoom was always developed for enterprises, was always developed for organizations, and where you have an IT team to tell you what to do, what not to do. Well, when the pandemic hit us, we a lot of different kind of users started using our platform, which were individuals and maybe celebrities and so on and so forth. And what happens is when an individual starts using it, they start clicking pictures, putting it on Facebook, putting it on social media, and so on and so forth, in a very different manner, and which invites unwanted attention, right? That's when we realized that, hey, you know what? This is very different. Our platforming is being used in a very different way, and we need to revamp. And that's what we did. We revamped and completely launched a new, upgraded security in our platform. Today, we are probably one of the most secured platforms available in the world with the best of the security features, be it 256-bit GCM and encryption to a whole lot of other stuff. Now, the question is, if we talk about the security parameters, it is the point that how these are implemented, especially in the PSU government. And let's take an example of a bank, right? I mean, bank, especially when they are implementing it, there are certain things like you don't want your employees to record something, for example. If that is recorded, it needs to be reposited on the bank's servers or local servers. Similarly, if there is something else, as you highlighted, like data center security, what data centers are the collaboration service providers operating from. Similarly, if it's a government organization, then how is the data flowing? Is it going through today in this geopolitical world? Is it going through a country where it is not required to go to? Can you control really that the data flow through the data centers? So Zoom has built in all these capabilities which are required for the different organizations and different kind of users for of our platform. So for example, we have controls which allow you to deselect certain countries. Like for example, just imagine you are making a phone call, right, from here to another country. It goes through multiple hops through various countries. You don't want it to hop through a particular country. You can stop that. That's what happens in Zoom. Similarly, you can enable disabled recordings, data center securities, similarly, network-based recording, password protection, encryption, and so on and so forth. There are tons and tons of security features out there. It is the IT team and the technology team which needs to really sit down with our engineers and say that, okay, these are the features which we want to implement. Let's go ahead and how to do it. So Zoom has amazing capabilities about security built in for different segments that are different, and it can be implemented in a very customized manner for each of the entities.
Now we all are moving into a hybrid world, and some things are gradually opening up, market, offices, and all. So, and there is a broader understanding within the industry. It is going to be a combination of physical and online. So, what steps Zoom is taking in order to create a better collaboration between these two worlds, where maybe an education institute will be having some classes offline and something online, and their focus would be to give the same kind of agility and ensure same kind of quality in both the platforms.
Well, thank you for bringing that up, Ujaley. I think we are at a very interesting. We are in an era which is very interesting, and which probably, if somebody has to sit down and take a note of, will go down in the history, because this is a witnessing of evolution and transformation of technology. If you sit back today and you will probably see on social media or historical timelines, you will see, oh, the telephone used to look like a black big device, which used to be connected with hefty wires, used to have such a big receiver. You would dial it, and so on and so forth, right? Look at it today, where we are. We're such a smartphone and internet enabled, and so on and so forth. For people who have not seen the past, for them, oh, it was like that. But a person like me, who has got a lot of gray hairs, who has seen all this evolution, who has seen that, or dialed a number on that black huge phone, and remembers it took me 8 years. My dad took 8 years to get that line connected to my home. It was a big achievement. We all celebrated after that. But that's what exactly collaboration technology is going through today. We've seen an era in the last 2 years where we went from a telephone call to video becoming the audio. Today, people, even if you're talking to your loved ones, friends, families, let's do a video call. Chalo, video call karte hain. That is the usual norm, right? And audio is like, okay. What is next? Next is evolution of the collaboration platform, and that's what Zoom is going through. We've brought in so many features to help the hybrid environment, because when it is hybrid, obviously the infrastructure is going to shrink down. People are not going to have so many desks. You need to book your desk, and so on and so forth. So, for example, we've got hybrid environment where you can get into a conference room and start a conference without even touching a device. Similarly, you can book your desk, online booking, and when you go to the office, the desk is yours waiting for you, right? Similarly, you have kiosks and whiteboarding. We have bringing in technologies like artificial intelligence, virtual reality, augmented reality. Let's say, for example, if it wouldn't have been me to speaking to you because, Rishi just asked, hey, can you switch off your background? Well, I could bring in my avatar and speak to you, right? How cool that would be. Because just because I'm uncomfortable on my video doesn't mean that my avatar couldn't be here. So that's the evolution of collaboration technology that's happening, and Zoom is leading in that. We have introduced so many features to help the people, students, PSUs, government to get back into offices in a hybrid environment, and the list is just ending.
Mr. Samir Raje, thank you so much for your time and sharing your views on customer experience and as to how the kind of evaluation that we have seen over the last 2 years, some of the general assessment of yours, and why public sector organization need to more explore collaboration tool. And in the hybrid world, it is going to be a great enabler for everybody. Thank you so much for your time, sir.
Thank you, Ujaley, for having me here. It was a pleasure meeting you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Raje and Mr. Ujaley, for such an engrossing and meaningful chat session. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's take a short break again. There's a lot more on the other side of the break. Stay tuned.